Hello everyone, Xenero Gaming coming at y'all with another video, and today we are talking Digimon, right? So just recently, in the last couple of days, the banned and restricted card announcement has happened for Digimon. Now I have not had a chance to really go in detail over the list. I hope that most of you know what the exact list is, but if you don't, I want to kind of just go through this a little bit. I have a whole kind of presentation slide to show everyone kind of what is going on, give you guys my thoughts and everything like that. But if you need to find the list, I'll make sure to list this link for the list in the description of the video so you guys know what it is. But starting on September the 1st, so you have one more weekend at your LGSs to start playing with all of the decks that you currently have, but starting on the 1st, Monday, you will no longer be able to play with certain cards, and certain cards will be limited. But we're going to do a speed run here on the site here. Banned cards, the Sayo and Co. from EX5 is banned, and it's really just been because it is a component of some degenerate looping shenanigans. Gravity Crush and Parabolic Jump both getting hit to 1. I do like the preemptive hit of the Parabolic Jump, just making sure none of these memory gain cards get abused. And obviously the Gravity Crush has been kind of crazy for a while. Royal Knights of the Purge getting hit to 1. Garudamon X Anybody getting hit to 1. Groundmon EX 3 getting hit to 1. This one is very confusing why it's not the Groundmon X. Your Rush Gyomon for EX04 going to 1. Your EX1 Metal Garurumon is going to 1. Sakuyamon BT19 is also going to 1 copy. As well as EX2 Digivolution Plugin S. Like I said, this is a big list here, kind of going scorched earth, but I do love this list. And then there is a banned pairing restriction, so you can no longer include Chaosmon Valder Arm with any 3 copies of this card. If any of these cards, or I guess 2 cards, if Talmon or Sakuyamon are in, or Sakuyamon X Anybody are in your deck, you cannot play with Chaosmon Valder Arm. They just think that, you know, the Chaosmon Valder Arm is pretty fast. If you want me to go through their reasonings here on why they think that these cards are an issue, we can definitely do a video like that if y'all want to hear about their reasoning wise and my reasoning wise. But if y'all want me to break down their reasonings and to kind of analyze it, I can do that. But I do suggest that you get on here. I'll put this link in the description below. Read through this, read their reasonings, and I do think that for most of the cards, they did a really good job of explaining why they hit the cards, and I've been waiting for them to put this stuff up. And you know, just their reasoning seems pretty good. Outside of the Knights of the Purge, to be honest, but everything else kind of made a little bit of sense. Besides the Purge and the Groundmon, I think that they just believe the Security Tap +1 on the Groundmon made it really strong, and I can kind of agree about that too, but we'll see going in the future, right? But that is the official site. This is going to be my little chart that I have for us here. Y'all know I love being on here and making all these different things, but here are some of my good and bads, right? The good and bad of the ban list. I usually do, you know, my thumbs up side and then my negative side. I want to state very clearly that, you know, I am very happy about this list. It kind of looks like there's maybe a little bit more on the negative side here. I wasn't doing that intentionally. I just put all my thoughts down, the couple of thoughts that I wanted to go over quickly, and clearly there's a couple more things on the negative. I think overall, the list, I would give it a good grade. I think it does a lot for the game, right? But 3 thumbs up. What do I think is 3 thumbs up? I think the ban on the Galaxy Tamer looping is toxic, and I'm glad that they banned that. That's probably the #1 thing from the whole list to take, is that Bandai was willing to do that. They thought that it was an issue. We've all told Bandai it's an issue forever, so big 3 thumbs up. If I had 4 thumbs up, I would give it that. I think that this is the biggest thing to take away from the list, is that they did ban the Galaxy Tamer because it has been toxic and been the main issue for a lot of different loopy shenanigans. If you're not, you know, sure what that does, I'm sure you can just look it up on a lot of other things, but essentially there's a lot of ways for you to, you know, essentially pass the turn to your opponent's turn, and at start of their main phase, steal the turn back by gaining memory, which is really insane. Two thumbs up. I think that most decks are still playable. I don't think that anything on this list was killed. I don't think that any deck is unplayable that they hit. Everything they touched, I think, was pretty fair. Maybe some decks got by a little bit better than others, and certainly some decks did get hit harder than others. You know, Sakuyamon and Guilmon being ones that got hit more than others, but their stuff being a little more generic going into other decks too is probably why they decided to hit them more. But I do think that all these decks are still playable. Nothing was killed from the list, and that's a positive thing to take into it, right? We don't want them to, you know, absolutely destroy things on the list. We want them to help make the decks in a more solid state to play with other decks, right? Thumbs up from the list. I do think that coming from this list, more decks will have room in the metagame. I think that, you know, now certain cards and decks that couldn't be played before just because of the prevalence of certain you know, shenanigans, whether that be the Royal Knights pushing the pace of the game too fast, or Sakuyamon just keeping you from playing the game, or maybe you couldn't really play a control deck because the Guilmon was too fast and controlled your board too much. But I do think that there will be a lot of room for new decks to come in this meta. And I do like the Sakuyamon hits. I thought that there were a lot of hits, but a lot of people, I've not personally mind Sakuyamon because I'm also a control player, and I think that control does pretty well into the Sakuyamon. But, you know, people like to be able to do certain things in the game, and I do think that Sakuyamon did keep a lot of players in a state of not being able to play the game as well, but then also not winning super fast, right? In some instances, whereas, like, I think the Guilmon stuff, at least, you know, that can win the game pretty fast, and it doesn't feel as bad to play against that kind of stuff, I think, because at least they're doing something to win the game quick and maybe get to the next game. But a lot of positives overall for the ban list. So what are some of the negatives? I'm not sure why they didn't unban/unlimit old cards. There's a lot of cards on the list, I think, that could come off and they have a space to breathe and really do some good stuff in the meta and breathe some life into old decks. And they decided not to do that. It was already a really big list, so I could see, you know, their reasonings not wanting to make things too complicated because it is already a very complicated list. Anytime you do any kind of, you know, ban and then also pairings and then also hits on cards, that is a lot for everyone to consume at one time. So hopefully they give us another updated list soon, just bringing out some old cards. I don't think they're going to do that because they haven't been as willing to do that, and further along on the slide we'll get into what some of those cards may be, right? That was my 3 thumbs down on that one. I'm pretty upset that a couple cards didn't come off. Obviously, you know, me being a BWGX, Blackboard Grade 1 X Anybody player, you know, I'm pretty upset not getting my X Anybody. And then also, you know, like, I think Yellow Hybrid card, the Jet Sylphimon could have came back among kind of maybe olders. If y'all watched my old video, me kind of predicting this and going over some cards, be sure to check it out if you want my input on what should have been hit on the list. 2 thumbs down for only 1 Royal Knight hit, but then also multiple hits on Sakuyamon. Sakuyamon did some good things to help slow down Royal Knights. And I think that it just shows Bandai in general, based off of Digimon and other card games, they prefer to have people play with really crazy decks, and then also don't want you to play with crazy control decks, right? And I don't think that that is a good way to be in the game, because the reason, if any of you know, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! For like 10 years, and I stopped playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For that kind of aspect of gaming. And I think that if Bandai isn't careful, they're going to turn all their games kind of into Yu-Gi-Oh! But then, you know, kind of making their games not as unique, with them only wanting to, you know, really promote these kind of, you play the game, anything that makes you not able to play the game, we will try to make it hit. So I don't like the precedent they're trying to set here, but I do think that, you know, with how prevalent Royal Knights is, it only getting 1 hit, if I had to predict real quick, I think that Royal Knights may be a problem in the meta to come. If you were maybe happy that this might put them down a notch, I think you're going to be sorely mistaken and upset about it. And 1 thumbs down on the wrong Groundmon getting hit. I understand their reasoning on the security attack, maybe letting the Megadramon just finish the game too fast, but I think it's the consistency that the Groundmon X Anybody brings to their particular deck and the Bird deck that really lets it just be so stifling, putting so much pressure on your board. Whereas I would rather take that extra security hit than have them get another full stack, blow up my whole counter again, and then, you know, just keep pushing the state of the game. So I do think they hit the wrong Groundmon, but maybe they thought if they hit that one, that then the, you know, actual Gallantmon deck would suffer as a recourse of it. Gas getting hit kind of early. The Metal Garurumon getting hit, the EX1. They don't like people manipulating memory, right? And I think that they've been pretty harsh on anything that mills people's decks or gains crazy memory. And I think that the Garurumon, the gas deck, if you're not familiar with that, that's just Garurumon Omnimon Alter S deck. It's just goes crazy, swings, gains memory, does all kinds of shenanigans. And they saw that top at one tournament, and I think it scared them to preeminently hit that deck, and they didn't want to do the Omnimon, which makes a lot of sense, so they hit that. But I do think that a lot of people are gonna, be really upset thinking that Omnimon Alter S is going anywhere, but it is not. It's still a new product for them. They were not going to hit the Omnimon Alter S as much as people wanted them to. But a negative, not so much about the list, but just in general, Birds had to take the hit for the Guillemon sins. Excuse me. I feel bad for bird deck players. We have a guy at our locals who just finished his bird deck, and now he's pretty upset that as soon as he built it, it got hit. For him, I told him the deck's been around a long time, so it kind of feels bad for him. But the birds had to take the hit for Guillemon Sins is a one thing here. But that happens sometimes. The birds were using an engine that wasn't necessarily meant for their deck, so whenever you do stuff like that, if it is a busted engine, kind of like with how purple decks used to do with the purple, beast kind of engine stuff they had going on, you have to watch out for stuff like that. But those are the pros and cons. Let's get through this a little bit, right? I love the list outside of only one Royal Knight hit. This is the list. Sorry about the quality on this. I feel like that doesn't look very good, but every image of this I try to get just did not expand well. Hopefully when I edit this, it can make the quality look a little bit better. But this kind of makes the list a little bit more consumable for you. It is effective September 1st. These are all the cards I stated down here. 9 new cards on the restricted list, 1 banned card, and then a 3-card pairing. Technically a 1 card to 2 card ratio on that. If your deck has either the Talmon or the Sakuyamon X, you cannot include the Valder Arm, but the deck still has Ruin mode, right? So I think that the deck is going to be doing just fine. And I did want to, show you guys down here below. These are the cards that I said would get hit on the list. These are my cards that I predicted would get hit. Obviously, I got a couple right, got a couple wrong. I really didn't get very many right because I was really hoping they would hit some of these decks that were doing crazy things, and they decided to go down a different path, but I am not too upset about it. I did say the Gravity Crush, that was probably an easy one to get, and the Royal Knights of the Purge getting hit to 1. I did say all these cards would get hit to 1. The Groundmon getting hit and it being the wrong one, I think is pretty close. But so far, those are my thoughts on it, and that's what eventually got hit. So not the best predictions, but I am a little more, hit a lot of different things, and I do believe they did, but it was more of like hitting like these 4 cards here, the red cards all kind of hitting at one package, and then these pair banning and these 2 hits here all hitting Sakuyamon are just a lot of cards hitting the same decks, right? We got 4 cards, or 3 cards essentially hitting Guillemon, 1 card hitting Birds. If you look at all 5 of these together, it's 5 cards hitting Sakuyamon, and then only 1 for Omnimon shenanigan stuff, which is a little interesting. Whereas, like, I would have spread it out a little bit more and maybe done a little bit different of idea. But these are the cards I thought would get hit. At least we got a couple of those right. Now, coming on, I did take some of this information. If you do not watch East underscore, I think, ML, I love his YouTube page. It is really, really cool. He does some really cool stuff. He had this information up on one of his videos in the site, kind of showing the information about what happened recently at one of the Grand Asian tournaments. And this is just kind of like a breakdown. I kind of wanted to take this conversation into where do we see going from here, what decks recently topped in those tournaments, and then did they hit the right things, right? So what you can see here is that the 64 players, the most being played was Sakuyamon 15, then Guillemon Birds 11, and then Royal Knight 6, and then Gallantmon 6, Magitramon 5, Omnimon 3, and then a whole slew of decks outside of there, right? But if you take that into account, the top 5 decks of the meta did all get some kind of hit in one way or another, which is a good, ratio to take into it. Now, up here on the top part, This is the breakdown of the top 16, which decks made it in, and you can see here that the Guilmon Birds making it in was pretty good conversion rate for one of the top decks, and then Sakuyamon, Gallantmon stuff kind of being at 33%. The conversion was pretty cool too. And then these random things, the green good stuff, Leviamon, Galaxy, and Machine Dramon, not really taking that account. We're just trying to stay on the topic of the ban list, right? And just seeing how many different Sakuyamons and Guilmon Birds / Gallantmon stuff were in the top shows that these definitely were the decks that needed to be hit. And I do think going forward, these decks will be coming down some. So if we take into account some of the percentage, say now, half of these decks don't make it, that would make for a pretty interesting meta in the current state of the game. Now, of course, you would have a lot less players playing these decks going into the tournaments, which would change the rate of their conversion down a little bit too. But I think that if you hit all these decks, say you cut them in half, 1 Gallantmon, 2 Birds, 2 Sakuya, and make some more room for other decks, I think that we would be in a really healthy state of the meta. All these other images here are just things that, I had in my previous video. These are the cards that I said, one of these two would get banned and then the other one would get banned. So I did say that the Tamer would get banned, and I was hoping that one of these other cards for Royal Knight would get banned. We did at least get the one hit on the Royal Knights of the Purge. The Jet Sylphiamon and the Grand Quaggasmon promo, I thought that both of these would come off the list. Neither of those happened. We did not get our pair banning of the Shoto with Mother taken off, considering they let you do it with the Eater deck, which I thought was interesting. So no changes there from what I thought about before. I did not think that any 4 of these limited cards would come off the list, that being the the Greymon X, the Shoutmon 4, the Dex Greymon, and the Were-Garurumon. None of those came off the list. And then, like I said down here before, these are some of the cards that I said would get hit on the list, but we had a couple of those missing out, right? I think I have a couple more slides. These are just some of the cards I thought that should be talked about on the list. A lot of things didn't get touched, right? This is what I thought every single card I tried to bring up outside of some of the things on these other slides as well. But this is my list of cards to watch, and a lot of them did get touched. The Digivolution plugin getting touched, the Royal Knights of the Purge. But you can see there are a lot of other problem cards in the game that I think did not get touched. And if I really had to predict going forward, I do think that Imperial Dramon is going to find a huge spot in the meta now. You can see based off of those tournaments, a couple of people did bring in Imperial Dramon to each of those. Now, none of them did make it into the top 16, but they probably just saw bad matchups and stuff like that. I don't think that they match up well into Sakuyamon or the Birds or the Royal Knights. So now that those decks are getting hit, I think you're going to see a big boost in Imperial Dramon decks now that nothing got touched. And I've been calling for the Tamer to get hit for a while, so we will see going into the future what that does entail. Nothing from Purple Hybrids got hit as well. If we can go on here, you saw one person make it, take it and play it into that top 64. Because it was just 64 players for that big tournament. And him not being able to make it, which is, kind of interesting. Him or her, sorry. Make it into the topping there is interesting. I do think that Purple Hybrids will be, doing really well now. And just outside of that, a couple other decks to worry about. Just being the Omnimon decks, Gallantmon deck's probably still going to be doing well. I am a big proponent of thinking Lucamon is still really strong right now. Or the, 7 Great Demon Lords decks, any kind of decks like that. I think they're really tuned out the wazoo, and a lot of people just don't play those decks, but I do foresee those doing pretty well. But I think going forward, we will see a healthy mix-up of the meta. Go out to your local game stores this weekend, get your last hurrah of playing these decks before starting next week. You will have to change a lot of your list. And spoilers for me, none of my decks I play with, I had to change a single card in with any of these listings on any of these lists. Nothing I had is affected by any of these cards. Not a single card affected anything I play, which is really cool to know. If most of you know, I'm a kind of anti-meta control-y kind of player. So and I did not play Sakuyamon because it was super meta and I wasn't crazy about it. But most of my decks are sent pretty well. But I am pretty hopeful going into this next part of the card game for us, that we will be having a really healthy meta and a lot of fun stuff to look forward to. But let me know in the comments down below, what decks do you guys see coming up and taking over the meta? I think that we're going to have a healthy mix of like 6 to 8 decks that can all perform really, really well. But I do think that if I had to take a hot take and a stance, I do think that, you know, the Royal Knight deck and the Omnimon deck will be 2 of the decks that still stay on top, and in the other decks, the Sakuyamon and Growlmon stuff, will still be competitors in the meta scene, but not as dominant as they once were. But please leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everyone hanging out with me today. I really love making content for the channel. It's so much fun. I love Digimon. I love all the card games. But, you know, please leave in the comments down below what you guys want to see from me. I've been trying to get more feedback from the community. I know I can ramble a lot, so that's one thing I'm working on. Like trying to close out this video here too, right? But once again, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Peace.